Okay. Top left-hand corner is myself, Andy Cox, and my colleague, bottom left-hand corner, is Robert or Bob Webb. We work for an organisation of directors of Transmit Enterprise KIC. We are based in the UK and we are headquartered in Gateshead in the northeast of England. My background is principally working in public sector human resources. I have worked in the social economy as a consultant. I've been a visiting lecturer and professor at Duesto University in the Basque region, and also been a director of a mental health care company across UK. My colleague Bob has had a teaching history and a very rich social entrepreneurship experiences. Now, a few years ago, Bob and I reconnected after working in the social economy, and we both recognised that whether you're working in mental health or social enterprise or a number of different fields, that notwithstanding the fact that there are significant problems with structural issues here in the UK in terms of supporting people and seeing many people languishing or unemployed or living in poverty, we wanted to do something about it. We wanted to put something in the hands of those people who were in that situation, who are often called these days complex. We wanted to bring them some hope. This is a gentleman who Bob and I have seen many a times on our screen, and basically is asking for something different. Rather than me do a 20-minute presentation on what is Signal, I've got a 2-minute video that will help demystify. So if you bear with me, this is a very quick video. Okay then, Signal originated and is part of a global movement known as Poverty Stoplight. It operates in about 23 countries and grows by the week. Operates via 200 organisations, and to this point in March, some 80,000 families have actually taken part in the global Poverty Stoplight movement. And the target is to support and help individuals across the globe, up to 1 million people this year. When Bob and I came across Poverty Stoplight some 2-3 years ago, we tested this and recognised that the words Poverty Stoplight was not the greatest methodology or wording to engage. So we rebranded to Signal. Plus, we've worked hard over the last couple of years to ensure that the technology meets with a methodology that has significant evidence base of working. Now, we know that that poverty, and we can interchange poverty with social exclusion, as we've already said, or complex lifestyles, or troubled families, but it looks different for everybody. And what the video didn't say to you is that the evidence-based methodology has actually got an authentication through Oxford University, through their Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. So the methodology follows what's called Zalkai or Foster multidimensional approach, but the ethical and efficacy of the methodology is also approved. So any organisation who uses it and uses the data can be assured that it has a robustness and it's well recognised globally. So the methodology follows a group of unbiased questions across 6 dimensions, which principally follow human rights. The sort of dimensions include income and employment, housing and infrastructure, education and culture, organisation and participation, health and environment, and also very importantly, interiority and motivation. The methodology helps focus on causes rather than symptoms to address problems. For example, mental health, and that's sort of my background, is a symptom of something else happening in somebody's life. It is an asset-based methodology, and you'll see that as we go through, as well as the methodology helping individuals, households, and communities to start redefining their social challenges. And of course, it's digital. It simplifies lifestyles and complexity and tangled lifestyles to help get to the truth. So in a sort of a nutshell, the process works in a facilitated fashion. It uses predominantly pictures to answer questions. The methodology asks an individual to assess themselves against a red, amber, green response. Red being, I'm in deficit of poverty, amber, I'm in between, and green, I'm okay. And because the responses are given and geographically referenced, we can accumulate data both at a micro and a macro level. So there are some sort of obvious things that we speak to organizations about social science and the how things are tied to human development theories. But one I want to sort of show with you, and not necessarily go through it in any great detail, but you may after want to have a look at Wilber's and integral theory and quadrants, which allows, or the methodology helps us look at an individual and a sort of a community from a 360-degree lens, both looking at intention, behavior, culture, and systems from a point of view that doesn't miss out, most importantly, the individual right at the center of data. What I'm going to now do is show you some of the key features as identified by some of our users. Now, currently we are working in the employment training sectors. We work in housing, particularly social housing. We're working in regeneration areas with regeneration programs. We work with advice and guidance organizations, and we also work in care. We are about to work in homelessness and youth. Organizations have approached us to slightly adopt or adapt some of the methodology in terms of the questions, etc., to fit their clientele. So the key to this is always about the micro data, because this is a transformational methodology, not a transactional. The transformation is working with the individual, so it's a bottom-up approach. And as we've said, individuals answer questions by tapping on the screen, red, amber, green, how they personally feel. At the end of a process, an individual gets a sort of a dashboard showing their assets, their greens, their ambers, and the reds, which are obviously deficits. But what happens at this point when it's facilitated is an individual is able to hover over their dashboard and decide for themselves, why don't I have a particular asset? What do I got to do to attain it, and when will I have it by? Now, individuals tend not to choose more than three priorities, given that it's a big. If you've got a lot of red, it's very difficult to work on many different things at once. But because this works on a causes rather than symptoms, it's very easy to link different indicators together and recognize that working on one indicator will have an impact on many. If I give an example, when I worked in mental health and psychology, I was a business development director, wrote tenders, implemented tenders, and what I would have done differently, I had this product, I would have recognized that 70 to 80% of people who require primary mental health care would require assistance, but wouldn't necessarily need top-end cognitive behavioural therapy. The causes of their mental health might have been down to debt management, and therefore, unless debt management was factored in right at the beginning of their treatment, they would still wake up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, worry about their debt, and would exacerbate their mental health issue. So the whole plan here is to help co-produce a personal plan, and this personal plan is held within a case management system. Well, we're not all social scientists, but we do know the value of data, and it's becoming more and more important to our organisations. So at a micro and macro level, we were recognised last year as one of the best startups, 2018, in the UK for Signal, because it manages both the micro and the macro data, and we'll explore a bit of that now. Because right at the beginning of the process, there's a short sort of collection of demographic data. It takes about 2 minutes, in fact, and this gives an organisation an opportunity to dig deep into their socio-economic indicators. And just for an example, Bob and I were doing some work a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if you can see my cursor around the age distribution pie chart, and looking at that 10%, which represented people between the ages of 19 and 25 in employment and employment training. And we recognised that with our business partners, that between 28%, it was definitely 28% of individuals in this age group either were not registered to vote or didn't know whether they would register to vote. Now, I don't know if that is a key issue, but certainly in terms of human rights and ability to be a civil part of civil society, it probably has an effect. This just gives you an idea of how you can dive into the data using the Signal methodology. You can also present data on infographics, and the benefit of this is presenting data in various formats highlights key issues. For example, if you look here, I know it's a tight screen, but on this line here, insurance is very red, and with conversations in organisations, what's become clear to some of the users is that insurance is a big barrier to people attending employment and employment training schemes. And in particular, we've got examples in the northeast of England where individuals are reluctant to leave their homes because of potential burglary, and not just for employment, but also for social activities. And what some of the individuals have educated us on is you leave a house without household insurance, you're burgled, you lose your kettle and your microwave, it's a big issue. If you do have insurance, obviously it's less of an issue, it's still psychologically not good. But this is one of the barriers that one or two organisations are recognising and are now working with social housing organisations to get cheaper insurance for their members if they participate on their employment training. That's just one example, however, of many that we have. Again, presentation is everything, and the reading of data highlights issues pertinent to cohorts of learners. For example, this is an automated infographic highlighting how important communication was to a cohort in bike in the East End of Newcastle, and right at the top of there in the top 5, how important or lacking in skill sets people were for developing their entrepreneurial spirit. Now, the methodology also allows a participants or the organisations using methodology to look on the left-hand side, choose any indicators through the methodology and start working through what might be relevant. This has once again sort of picked up the insurance, just to continue that theme. This is a map, obviously, of the northeast of England. We have the green, amber, reds visible, and it looks from that, yeah, there are a combination of all. Is it a problem? Well, if you take out the greens and you've got the reds and ambers, it certainly looks like a problem for this cohort. Taking out the ambers could mean people are at risk of going into red, or with a bit of action could go red. Again, this is simply an illustration. So in summary, what we're saying is that the signal methodology is quite intuitive. It's picture-based. Whilst there are very few words actually used, it's in very sort of simple English language. It has an easy-to-use interface. It's mobile. It works both on a web app and an Android app. It facilitates change at a micro level. We've seen the evidence. We've got tons of evidence from our business partners and internationally, and it also facilitates macro level conversation in organizations to consider whether or not they are running the right types of services, the right interventions, etc. But the methodology is validated and it's part of a global movement. The whole of the system is secure and compliant with data protection, GDPR, and we have got quite a bit of traction here in the UK. 30 plus organisations are using it at this point in time, and probably the same again in the pipeline of piloting. What we have here is an opportunity for us not just to work with new partners across UK, but also to develop into sectors and try to take what we would consider as a minimum viable product and start shaping it to the needs and requirements of our users. So that's me. I hope I haven't gone through that too quickly. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Andy. That's fascinating sort of stuff. So, over to everybody else. Are there any sort of questions while people are thinking about it? Andy, what kind of organisations are sort of using your sort of services now?
Absolutely. I'll just go back to this screen. We've got 30 plus user partners. So Springboard is an employment and training organisation in the northeast of England. They are working predominantly with NEET customers, adult returners, and they carry out apprenticeships, etc. It's no surprise that Springboard are very keen to use this to better understand the social needs and barriers for their customers to achieve a hard outcome like a qualification, apprenticeship, or going into enterprise. This just helps them understand the individual better to give them a better experience. For example, Springboard recently recognised there's a massive link between dental hygiene and confidence going for interviews. So what they do now is they have pop-up dental sessions at the delivery sites. I never thought that dentistry or dental hygiene would be a big issue. I thought that was for a third world country, but it's massive. Carbon Homes is a social housing landlord, one of the biggest ones in the northern region. Community Renewal is an Edinburgh-based organisation who do a lot of social regeneration both across Edinburgh and Glasgow. Citizens Advice Bureau, I think we're very familiar with Citizens Advice Bureau.
Yeah.
YMCA working with youth, but also doing research around what the real needs of local populations are. Food Nation is a big organisation into food poverty, looking at what are the root causes of food poverty. Broadacres is a care organisation working across the north of England and Yorkshire. They've started on their cohort of mental health users of services. Newcastle Futures an employment DWP provider, and an even better, Arborthorne is a regeneration project in Sheffield that are using this to better understand the needs of their local population, but also to then target resources against those areas that require intervention.
Interesting. I'll come back with another sort of question in a second. We've had somebody ask, are the indicators set as part of the methodology, or are they developed by the organisation using the system?
Well, what we say is that any organisation who want to sort of follow the human rights approach, it's in their interest to use the current deck, because they've been developed over a number of years, and because it's authenticated by Oxford University. Anything that wavers from the sort of the fixed deck, let's call it, needs approval. However, if you're moving from a sort of an adult sector, let's say, to a youth, or you're moving from looking at people who are with a roof over the head to homeless, it makes sense that you do adopt and adapt the sort of survey to make sure that it's engaging. So we are looking to develop into homelessness and youth, for example, not necessarily changing the 52 indicators broadly, but changing the way we approach the question, and probably some of the pictures would better represent the aspirational areas for those different clientele.
Okay. So there's a bit of, so that it's more about sort of developing these indicators when you're, I don't know, customizing the system or sort of something sort of like that. Is that?
Well, exactly. And very interestingly, we were asked this precise same question by all of our partners. And before they start, they ask the question, can we change some of these? And, we'll have the conversation. Yeah, no problem. However, why don't you give it a couple of months? Because you will find that some of these questions will be pertinent. So, for example, if you were to ask an individual, do you have a mental health problem? You'll not get a response. If you ask somebody if they've got sleeping issues or they can access health systems, you're more likely to get the answer about mental health. So the methodology is helping to have a greater conversation with the individual and explore the causes of problems. I think most organizations, once they have started using the methodology, do not change the questions. They might ask for something to be tweaked. I do think the homeless and the youth sector will be making some significant changes to get a better engagement from the participants.
Vaguely sort of connected, but you mentioned what sort of work you've done for housing sort of sector, like housing sort of providers. I mean, we have a lot of, apart from organisations in membership who help people into work, we've actually got a lot of housing associations who are, of course, to this sort of membership. What sort of work have you done with that sort of sector? You did mention it during your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we give two examples here, Carbon Homes and Carbon Homes and Broadacres, who are also a social landlord. They're looking at it from different perspectives. Carbon Homes have ventured a few new areas. However, right at the core of this, what Carbon Homes was saying is that with prospective new clients looking for a tenancy, they would far rather know today some of the issues that might be affecting a new customer. And they will work with that new customer on a number of issues. And when their tenancy goes live, they're familiar with each other and they've got a package of support in place. It might not necessarily be directly from Carbon, but it might be from organisations that they're partners with in the locality. So what Signal does best is to go into an organisation, whether it be a housing organisation, and ask the question, where do you have greatest problem, or where's the greatest complexity for your organisation? Because this methodology will help untangle some of that and not simplify somebody's suite of issues, but simplify how we can tackle some of those social challenges. So Carbon is one example of a housing organisation tackling an issue before somebody becomes a tenant. Broadacres, which is a care organisation, but a housing organisation as well, are looking at this, starting with customers with mental health problems, trying to understand better where some of the challenges lie in their lives. It could be with their community, it could be with their housing, it could be with employment, it could be about motivation. And what they're then going to do is look at their financial inclusion team to use it. So it's about finding different spots within an organisation that might get some simplification or might demystify something that's really complex. Some organisations do a blanket coverage and want to know everything about their customers, and therefore don't sort of forensically investigate one particular area. They'll do it right across the board.
Okay, that's very interesting. I don't think we've got any more questions at the moment, sort of, Andy. Give a couple more sort of minutes. Oh, hang on, I think we've got something else. So, from the same sort of person, is the idea to use the system to understand what individuals' challenges are, or to measure progress for individuals based on the red, amber, green?
Well, the methodology does both, and the question is absolutely right. At a micro level, the most important transformation is to best understand what's happening in somebody's life, and for that individual to decide for themselves what they want to tackle. And there is significant evidence that if a support agency decides on somebody's behalf, then they're just a typical recipient of service. If an individual determines for themselves or co-determines what they want to tackle, then there is a co-production plan. Now, the methodology not only creates or captures that data for organisations to have a baseline, but when that individual, say in 3 or 6 months' time, goes back and retakes let's call it a survey, when they retake the survey, the data is collected again for that individual. And when that's accumulated, organisations have a tool that measures social impact. And the sort of templates that the system has built in can measure what happened last year with this year, who can measure the changes for that individual or the cohort of individuals. So it can actually develop what the organisation wishes to measure in terms of social impact. But the question is quite right. It works at the micro, the individual level, and can also work at an organisation level to see how their interventions have made a difference in that individual and that community's life.
I suppose it's stating the obvious to say that it kind of depends what you want to get out of the information as to how you sort of structure the questions and how you're going to use the information sort of from it.
Well, that's right. And we've sort of said over time that the last thing an organisation really wants to do is become social scientists and be able to do statistical number crunching. It's a laborious exercise. It's a lengthy exercise, and people spend an awful lot of money on measuring impact. And the reality of this does it automatically for the organisation.
Yeah.
And it takes the science away from an organisation having to learn that, and it becomes more of an art. What are our indicators we need to look out for? What's new to us that we didn't know yesterday? And because it's a live system, I could put the live system on here now for you without breaking any. I'm not breaching any GDPR, folks, but that's a dashboard that any user or whatever would have, and that's just looking at the map. And there's loads of other things we can look at. But as somebody takes
sorry, Andy, are those dots individuals?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And if I click on that, so you basically, as an organisation, you can chunk up and down data right down to that individual and their personal circumstances and their case management. And you can chunk all the way up to have global data. So it doesn't take a great lot of surveys, let's say, for you to have some really rich data. So some organizations, for example, only take 200 over the course of a year, and the data that they get from this is magnificent. And they're able to investigate and review that data on the basis of, are we going in the right direction as an organization to fulfill the needs of our users? So those are some of the questions that we attend organization strategy days now, presenting back their data to allow a conversation to be had right across the organization about what this actually does mean and what direction should the organization be going in to tackle some of these issues.
Yeah. So, sorry, there's a follow-on sort of question. Same person, thank you. So would the main understanding of that change be going from, for example, red to green, or the change within those three colour categories?
No, it would be a straightforward, let's say if it was linear, somebody may go from red to amber to green over a period of time. Because there are 54 indicators here, it's very possible that an individual may predominantly go towards green, but not everything goes towards green. If I took this survey today, my perception of my set of circumstances would be probably different to that of a couple of months ago. So because life isn't a straight direction of travel, everything's going to go green, things happen in our life to challenge some of those indicators. And, with all the best will in the world, we would love everybody to go green. But the actual reality of life is it's not like that. But an organization working with individuals can quite easily start identifying the key causes of problems, tackle them, to have an enormous amount of changes to the reds and ambers. We've got examples in some of our customers where people have taken the survey 2 or 3 times and have eliminated virtually all of their reds and have predominance of green with some ambers that they're working on. Not saying everyone's like that, but once you start working on causes rather than symptoms of problems, it's easier to identify correctly what intervention you want, and you do tend to see a movement towards green.
Okay, interesting. Got another question, Andy. Do any adult education providers use this technology?
Well, in terms of some of the organisations, like I mentioned, Springboard, I mentioned a few others, do adult education, but not necessarily in a college environment. It's more of a classroom environment within a non college environment. So yes, and in fact, I attended last week, a user who had an Ofsted inspection. I was interviewed by Ofsted, and the demonstration of signal to Ofsted, for example, they were extremely impressed by the fact that this methodology highlighted some of the key challenge of the learners, and they could evidence through signal some of those changes that are being made to help a learner then focus on their harder outcomes. So it has got a lot of use in the learning environment.
Okay, good. Hope that answered your question. Another question. Can you tell me how long it would take for someone to answer the suite of questions? Is it time consuming?
Well, it takes up to 35 minutes. Now, we've worked with some organisations who have said to us, wow, that's a long time. Well, I know from what it's like to do an assessment of somebody's needs, do risk assessment, etc., etc. It can take a lot longer than that. But I liken it to go to the doctors. If I go to the doctors and, you know, I get 6 minutes, the doctor hardly has time to put his head off the desk. He's writing the prescription out. If he gives me 12 minutes, he can properly diagnose my circumstances, prescribe what I need, or refer me to what I need, and it's more likely to cure whatever I have or help. And I think there lies one of the answers that our current users would argue. And the other thing is, I mean, this is an argument made by Citizens Advice Bureau, that they have a lot of repeat customers, or they did have a lot of repeat customers, people coming in with certain symptoms that they help resolve. But using Signal and Citizens Advice Bureau in Newcastle, what they've found is that there are less repeat customers because they're getting to the heart of their troubles a lot quicker, and they're able to respond according to people's causes of problems rather than the symptoms. So it's like any type of assessment. The more rigorous it's done at the beginning, then the more likelihood is you're going to be responding appropriately. So 35 minutes, we suggest. I can sit down now and work with somebody. It takes me about 20 minutes. It depends how familiar you are using it. And it's like any sort of tool. When you get familiar, you can go through it quicker.
Okay. Yeah. But I don't think we've got any more questions logged at the moment, sort of Andy. It's 12:45. If there are no more questions, last chance, everyone, if you want to tap in a question, we'll sort of call it a day. That's been a fascinating session. We'll send out the slides, and as I say, we'll also send out the link. It might take a day or two to get the recording up, but we'll send a link to the recording of the webinar as well.
Roger, it's Bob here. There is another question.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Yes, good. Somebody's paying attention. Thank you for that, Bob. Would this technology be available as an app, or is it logging onto a website? I ask because sometimes we're in areas with no signal or internet access. Goodness, no internet access.
No problem. It's available both ways. It's a web application, and it's also an Android app downloadable through Google Play. So the benefit, obviously, of the Android app is that it works without Wi-Fi or without internet connection, and you can take as many of the surveys as you want without Wi-Fi. And when you hit a Wi-Fi zone, or you're back at office, let's say, it syncs it immediately into your database. So we've got both. It doesn't work on iOS. There is less demand on iOS at this moment in time. There's one in production, but there's less demand because the hardware is a bit more expensive. The hardware we use for the app is about £100, and it can be sort of logged out to dozens of people because everybody gets their own username and password. So, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I hope that answers the question. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about iOS, and you said it as we spoke. Last chance then. As I say, if there's nothing coming up just now, we'll send the slides out, which has got Andy's contact details on it, and we will send out the link to the recording of the webinar. So my thank you very much to Andy and Rob. A sort of virtual round of applause. Oh, hang on, somebody chat coming through.
It's a pleasure.
Great, lovely.
Pleasure.
Fabulous.
Many thanks.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.